Hello, this is Aoife and this is the Happy Weight podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Today I want to talk about protein and emotional eaters, because if we are emotional eaters, if we are wrapped up in a weight problem with disordered eating, we're not happy with our eating, obviously we're very vulnerable and exposed to tons of diet information. And the latest fashion over the last few years is definitely protein. And I suppose every nutrient has a fashion. You know, there's kind of like low fat one time, then there's low carb, now there's high protein, and they all just kind of trade places every few years. And it's sad because I suppose people just keep wanting to try and get away from the basics, which is that we need them all. And that the whole concept of there being one nutrient, that there's a free for all, and then another nutrient that you should totally cut out. It's just not healthy. And I suppose what I really want to do on this podcast is think about the long term and help you think about where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years time. And I really doubt it's cutting out a food group. I don't think that's your happy ever after. And I also think you might know people in your life that are a healthy weight, or you might have a slim best friend or a partner who eats whatever they want. They're not overweight. So you know logically that being a healthy weight does not require cutting out a food group and does not require having an excessive amount of a certain nutrient. I suppose I did Atkins for the first time when I was 16. And, there's a lot of people that enjoy a protein diet. And, there's some pros to it, of course. But it's just that whole thing that protein foods are lovely and fatty meats are yummy and fatty fish are lovely. But having loads to then cut out carbs is the part that gets it definitely disordered and is not really necessary or achievable long term. But I suppose when I was kind of coming to my senses then, and when I was figuring things out for myself, it was first of all, I'm not slim because I haven't found the right protein powder. I'm not slim because I need to add 20 grams more protein into my breakfast or something. It's that's so illogical. The healthiest parts of the world, the blue zones where people live to 100, they have a nice amount of meat or fish. They don't have a Western American amounts of protein. They have a nice amount of it, but they're certainly not having all these potions and protein powders and fake artificial things. And another thing that dawned on me is that at the time I was I am overweight, right? So that meant that I had clearly found more than enough food for myself. In fact, I had overfed my body beyond its natural weight. So I don't need to go adding foods into my diet. And I that was a new way of thinking for me, because I always would have been oh yeah, maybe if I just add this, or maybe if I add this, maybe that's the missing ingredient and that's why it hasn't worked. And it's it's all that planning and all that thinking about what the perfect good day is. It's getting us deeper into the problem, actually, because the more controlled you are, the more prescriptive you are about your diet, well, then it means the more out of control you're going to be with the foods that you might potentially actually want to eat. And that was another thing I realized for myself. I tell all my clients this, or help them understand, that we end up doing this thing called double dieting. We have our kind of prescribed way of eating for the week, what we think we should eat for our breakfast, lunch and dinner and snacks. That's what we're kind of mentally okay with, and that's what we approve of. But then we end up eating all the stuff we actually want to eat as well. So it's we're on two diets at the same time. And I suppose that's something that dawned on me as well, that well, at a certain point, it doesn't matter where you're getting the excess carbohydrate, just the fact you're having excess carbohydrate. And it doesn't matter where the excess calories are coming from, just what's tough on the body is the excess calories. So actually the healthier choice for me would be to remove all the prescriptive foods and just have the things that I love. For better or worse, just have the things that I love. So I'm working on not overeating. And that ended up being a very successful plan for me. And it's what I help clients work on now as well. So there are a few things to consider there. I suppose another really basic thing with protein, right, is that if you live in the UK or Ireland and you have a normal diet here, you're probably doing more than okay for protein. You really probably are. Like if you eat out ever, if you buy sandwiches, if you pretty much anything you eat is going to be large-ish portions of protein. And then if you kind of think of, we've our fish, obviously, we've our meat, we've eggs, we've cheese, we've nuts, we've nut butters, we've seeds. Like amongst all of them in the week, and yogurt as well, of course. Yogurt is another protein food. You're probably doing okay. Like most people, when they do the surveys of nutrition, we're doing grand for protein. So the people who would maybe need to have an eye out for protein is old people, because we start absorbing a percentage less protein. So it's like if you ate a steak and an 87-year-old ate a steak, they won't absorb the same amount of amino acids as you do. And that's a definite elderly problem. That as we've reducing appetite, to still keep an eye on protein, which is quite filling. But I think for most of the people listening to the podcast, that you're not in that zone probably. And the other crowd would be athletes. And I don't mean us going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. I mean full-time job athletes. They are the people that are probably, hopefully, working with a sports dietitian or something, and, really working out protein versus in relation to their expenditure in the gym. But and then I suppose the third crowd, just to mention there, would be vegans and vegetarians. There's a really high risk, especially with vegetarians, I think, and vegans really. You could just end up eating loads of chips and pasta and crisps and beige foods. And you really have to be quite on it with a selection of different proteins, because they all provide different amino acids. And that's what you're looking for when you're vegan or vegetarian, because your vegetarian amino acids and proteins aren't going to be as complete as meat or fish. So they're quite, I would say, for the majority of people listening to this podcast, don't come under any of those headings really. And then so for the rest of us, it's okay, if the average Joe, if we're, doing our best, but maybe not quite meeting 10,000 steps a day, if we're doing our best, but we're not quite doing 30 minutes of exercise every day, well, then we don't need to be really hitting the protein hard. And another thing you have to remember with protein is basically if you're having it in unnatural forms, if you're having bars and shakes and all the rest of it, you have to be aware of the amount of processed ingredients that you're adding to your body. And like I said, we're not lacking food. We're not the weight or the health that we want to be because something's missing in our diet. That's rarely the case. And when it comes to processed foods, I'm health-wise, I suppose, I think, we only have so much room for processed foods. We definitely want the vast majority of our diet to be coming from stuff that grows in the ground, walks in the land, swims in the sea. So we don't need a load of processed kind of protein foods or so-called health foods, because, we probably want ice cream and we want takeaways and we want chocolate and we want crackers or crisps or biscuits. We want the kind of processed foods that are yummy and add maybe taste and enjoyment to our diet. But there are no fake health foods. I'm very certain on that with my opinion, that health foods are something that occur naturally and contain one ingredient. So you can't buy health foods that have multiple ingredients and sweeteners and additives and all the rest of it. So I just don't see a place for them, to be honest. And like I said, we have to then, if we're using natural sources, so we're adding in more like meat or fish or whatever into our diet, especially with meat, we have to just be like, well, meat isn't like an absolute free for all either. And like, that's the whole thing. Like, we put our own limits, like we feel limited in our diet, and then we want something that you don't have to be limited with, you know. So we want to be on a diet where you can have unlimited 0 point veg or unlimited protein or whatever. But the thing is, the body doesn't work that way. And actually, your body is way sounder and way cooler, because with any food, it's like, it doesn't only want pasta. That would be such a gross feeling. You would feel so manky if you mainly ate pasta. But equally, your body doesn't want no pasta. Like, there are times where pasta will be delicious and you'll feel lovely after it, and it's the appropriate amount. And so it's the same with protein. Like, as in, my point there was that, like, you know, meat will also obviously have saturated fat in it. So you don't want like this massive, oh, meat is a free for all, I can have as much as I want of it. And also, just, I suppose, you know, everything I'd be talking a lot about is, you know, we're trying to help our body, basically. Like, if we want to be healthy, we want to be a healthy weight. Well, our markers are how you feel, all the signals from the nose down. So it's not going to be a good feeling to eat excessive amounts of protein and the saturated fat that comes with it. That's unlikely to be a healthy, exuberant feeling that you're going to have from doing that. And then, so what have I covered here? I've covered we're not slim because we haven't found the right protein food. So we have to think about the slim countries in the world that, you know, they don't eat any diet foods actually. So the most overweight countries eat the most diet foods. So we want to work backwards from that. Then I've also covered the point on the groups that do need high proteins or do need to look out for the protein content of their diet. That's old people, athletes, vegans and vegetarians. And then the next point I'm going to come on to is an appetite suppressant versus the pleasure from food. So basically, protein is often spoken about that it would be really good to help you lose weight because guess what? It suppresses your appetite. But the problem is, for emotional eaters and comfort eaters, we're not eating because we're hungry. That's the whole point. We're comfort eaters. We're emotional eaters. We're eating because we're emotional or we're looking for comfort. So actually, I think that excess protein in our diet is our worst nightmare, because what you're doing then is you're satiated all the time. And that's what's so unfair about the whole overeating cycle, right? Because basically, the more we overeat, the less our brain and body rewards us, i.e. the less, you know, serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, etc. we get from eating. If our body is already really well fed, we're just not going to get the same high from food, the same pleasure and all the rest of it. And that's why it's like, you just can't beat the saying, hunger is the best sauce, because the natural cycle of things is that you wait till your body has finished processing the last thing. Then your body is hungry and empty. Then your taste buds are more heightened. So anything that you do eat is more pleasurable. Anything then that you eat is going to be more effectively and comfortably digested, because you do have plenty of stomach acid available, you do have plenty digestive enzymes available, you do have more room in your stomach, your pancreas is ready to go with insulin, your heart is ready to pump fat around your body. So that's the perfect cycle of enjoying food, is waiting until your body is ready for it and then eating it. And so us trying to stay full, I think, is really shooting ourselves in the foot. Because, like, the other thing we have to admit, certainly was true for me anyway. Look, I could have eaten chicken breasts until they were coming out of my ears. It didn't mean I forgot that chocolate and crisps existed or biscuits existed. Like, as in, wanting sugar and wanting dopamine from chocolate and wanting comfort is a very different thing than satiety. And so this is the mistake that a lot of the diet advice gives, is that it pretends that satiety, the feeling of feeling satisfied and done, only comes from calories and nutrients. It doesn't only come from calories and nutrients. It also comes from, did you really enjoy the food? Like, are you at max pleasure? So much so that you're not even fussed about what's in the cupboard or the press because you had such a lovely dinner. Like, you hit the bullseye of the nutrition and pleasure and taste that your body wanted. So now you're full. Like, your meal is the appetite suppressant. The lovely, delicious meal that ticked loads of boxes is the appetite suppressant. And then, like I said, the cycle starts again. You let that wear off and then you get hungry again and everything tastes back to delicious. But what happens when we're overeating, and especially when we're doing it in a diet way, so that means that we're going to be having high protein snacks like protein bars, and then we're going to be having maybe high fiber snacks like, loads of nuts, loads of fruit. So we're basically taking away the appetite that we have for the meal. And this is especially right if we're above our healthy weight, because what we need to remember, if we're above our healthy weight, we're not going to be hungry as often because our body has stores and our body wants to use up those stores. So this is where, when you start listening to your hunger, you can probably start seeing how many times you're shoving food in when your body does not want it. And then the downside of that is when you emotionally need dessert or chocolate or some food later, you've already kind of hit your body's food needs for the day. So now this is surplus. So now it's making it look like the dessert or the chocolate is surplus to your diet, when actually I would say the protein bar, whatever, is the surplus to your diet because you didn't even want that. You didn't even love it or feel lucky eating it. You were eating it because you felt you should eat it. And like, just a quick calculation, if there was one protein bar that we elbowed into our day, not because we love it, not because we're like feeling lucky to eat it, but just more in that restrictive mindset, oh, I'm allowed to eat this, I get to eat this. Like 200 calories a day for 365 days a year is 73,000 calories. That is the calories of 21 pounds worth of fat. So like, I'm just all about, it's not the foods that you love are putting on weight. It's the foods that are sitting ducks in your diet that you have on routine, that you have just, out of routine or because you always have them or someone said you should have them or there was a diet that you did 10 years ago that you lost weight and you were eating these or whatever. But now they're not really serving a purpose in your diet. What they're actually doing is they're filling you up, meaning you don't knock maximum enjoyment out of your food. And when we don't knock maximum enjoyment out of our food, we're like junkies. Like, so like I said, the perfect cycle is we're hungry before food. So then all these pleasure receptors and everything go off in our brain and it's blissful and it's lovely and it tastes nice. And we have a lovely, cozy, happy belly after it. But if we're always satiated, if we're always quite fed and then we eat chocolate, it's a bit of a meh. It's a bit of a like, oh, I thought it was going to be nicer. Or we eat crisps and we're like, oh, I thought they'd be more rewarding actually. And then that makes us eat the whole packet because we're like, where is the reward? Like, how many do I have to eat to feel rewarded? And then unfortunately, we get through the pack and we're not really more rewarded. And it's a hard It's a hard pill to swallow that our body is in control, not us. So our body gets to decide when we get loads of pleasure from food. And so us, filling ourselves up all day on snacks or good things or things we should eat, and then wanting to get enjoyment out of chocolate when we're emotional, our body might just say, no, I'm not going to give you that much pleasure from this because you're already full and you don't need it. So like I say, I think we need to swap everything around, that you're having foods that are very worth it to you. And you know what? It's not as if I was to say, oh, please go off now and have your dream day of food. So what do you think would be the dream day in terms of how your body feels, like you enjoying food, tasting it, loving it as you're eating it, feeling amazing and cozy and gorgeous after it? Like, it's not going to be crisps every time. It's not going to be a pastry every time. It's not going to be a takeaway every time. Like this is the whole thing. When we avoid foods or we put foods in good foods, bad foods, we're really doing ourselves a disservice, and we're also doing our body a disservice, because like your body likes a variety of different things, and so do you. Like, as in, yeah, ice cream might be nice, but is it the only taste you want 3 days a week, 3 times a day for 7 days? I doubt it. Like, every food has different feelings, and we want to experience all those different feelings. Then I suppose another point, I've kind of hit on most of my points, but if someone did need to increase their protein, I suppose it is a great opportunity to get all involved in cooking and figure out how to make lentils yummy, or beans or peas or any of the natural legumes and stuff. Like, as in, having a higher protein diet with those foods is awesome. So if we can do that, go for it. But like I say, you don't as a rule need to increase your protein if you're an average person, and you certainly do not need the addition of protein foods. Like, as in, say people stopping at a filling station at 11 a.m. or 4 p.m. and having a protein bar. It is like, there is not a chance in hell that your body, like say as a normal semi-sedentary woman, needs like 4 eggs worth of protein at 11 a.m. because that's what a lot of these protein bars contain, 4 to 5 eggs worth of protein. Like, we don't, that's not what our body is crying out for. And like I said, just remind yourself of being logical. Like, we do not need to eat more in order to lose weight. We do not need to find more foods to add into our day. That's not the problem here. The problem is, or the solution, I suppose, the solution and the thing we want to move towards is, how can you eat such delicious, such unique and suitable foods to you that when your breakfast is done, it's done, and you go off to work and you're not thinking about food all morning until you start thinking about lunch. And then you make a super specific, unique to you, crazy delicious lunch that puts a lovely feeling in your body, so much so you're not interested in heading off snacking all evening and sabotaging your gorgeous dinner. And instead you go home, you're hungry for your dinner, you have a gorgeous dinner, and the game starts all over again. So yeah, I hope today's episode was helpful. Thank you so much for being here. Please give this podcast a review, a follow, the stars, etc. And also catch me on happyweight.ie if you want to do a one-to-one program, or you would like my hypnosis online program. Okay, take care. Have a lovely week.